Hey, what's up guys? Guardian here, coming to you guys with a new video today, and today we're going to be looking at my Premium Alfred deck. So it's been pretty much a year, I think, since I did a video on this. I hardly done any premium videos on the channel. I did the three last year with like Alfred, Ezel, and Blasters. The Blaster one did really well, as far as I can tell. And yeah, I thought with the Premium Collection 2020, of course, coming out this year, I did pick the cards up for Royals and Golds at the very least, and I do plan to bring some videos for Premium for some decks. And yeah, today we're going to start with Alfred, and he was the first one that I did. And from there, I think we'll probably look into Blasters next, and then Ezel I might look at a later date when I can actually be bothered to look into it. So yeah. But I want to start with Alfred because it's probably the one that hasn't changed that much. The cool thing is that because we have the Stride Fodder critical triggers now, we have a bit more room to put some other tech choices in the deck, which is actually pretty cool. So I'm going to try go through this a bit faster than usual, but knowing my ability to go through things fast, the video will probably be like 20 minutes, but we'll see what happens. So, to start with, for the grade 3s, we're going to be playing the 4 copies of Alfred Early, of course. He's still the best grade 3, just because he's an on-play skill, and he does give you those draws as well, which is very important to see pieces in the deck for your combos. So I definitely still think he is the best right target to have in here. Then second best, I would probably say, is the Monarch Alfred, just because he's another on-place. He also comes with the continuous skill of giving your Blaster Blades 10,000 power, which could come up if you do go into the new Crystaluster Dragon in different scenarios, but it doesn't really come up that often, but it is something to take note of. But he does basically recycle a Blaster Blade, so you can Soul Blast the one that you ride, add it back to your hand, so you've still got him, or you can recycle any from the drop zone. And the reason I play 3 of him is that I still like playing the 1 teched King of Knights Alfred as well. He's just nice because the way I see it is that the Monarch and the Early are good when you ride Blaster Blade, or if you at least have one in the hand that you can call through Early to then draw the card. But if not, then obviously to me that sounds like you don't have Blaster Blade. So it makes sense to me to have a King just so that you have the ability to search it when needed. As it could give you a good early game aggro as well, since the King can get you a 23k attack on the grade 3 turn. And this deck does not want to go slow. This deck really wants to just excel like really quickly in terms of getting to the grade 3 and then start striding. Because you really want to see all of your combo pieces and you just want to try essentially crit sack the opponent, which you'll see that when we get to the triggers. But this deck is a very glass cannon deck. The way I've sort of decided to build this is essentially just go as ham as possible, and if you die, you die. So yeah, that's kind of the way Alfred has to roll with things, since it's kind of a grade 3 deck. And obviously when you go into grade 3, that's either a death sentence or you might win. So Alfred does have kind of have to play that deadly sort of game. So next we have the grade 2s. We're going to, of course, start with the star himself, Blaster Blade. Got to play 4 of him. Yeah, you're going to restand him with your Flogals. Hopefully get some crits from your drive checks. And yeah, he's just he's Blaster Blade. I mean, yeah, don't really need to say why to play him in a deck. So with Alfred, you're probably wondering why am I doing like a Blaster deck first, right? Since MLB came out, he can get loads of markers really quickly. That's true, but one thing that Blasters don't have in Premium, which Alfred does, is this thing, which is Blaster Larousse. Blaster Javelin Larousse. So this requires a Alfred Vanguard to work, which is why Alfred has, you know, some sort of like playability in Premium with this. And of course, if you don't know, you put 2 cards in your hand into your soul, call 2 high beasts from your deck to open rears, and yeah, you can go get your Floral Paladin Flogals to start restanding Blaster Blade. You can go get a Paccgal, which can then countercharge you, give you some CB to work with for those restands. It's yeah, it's great, and I like playing 4 of it just to maximize on it. I don't like the idea of like having 3 and then, you know, damage checking 1 or whatever. I like to make sure I've got 4 just so that I've got access to it whenever I need it. This is pretty much one of the most vital pieces of the deck to go get the rest of your combo pieces. So yeah. And then one other thing Alfred has as well is the ability to use Tarna as well. So Tarna, it's kind of an indifferent card. It's seen various amounts of play in Premium for Alfred. But I've actually put it back to 3 since I was playing it at like 2 before. The reason I put it to 3 though was because we actually have a way of utilizing Tarna before we actually go into our stride step. And you're probably wondering, well, how do you do that, right? Because you have the ride phase, then the stride step, and then you go to main phase, which is when you would use Tarna usually. So Tarna's there to help you with the grade 3 game, obviously, if you go first. But if you do go second, Tarna is still usable. It's just that you need a little bit of setup prior to it in order to actually utilize it. But I'll get to that in a second. So the last grade 2 is going to be 2 copies of Light and Dark Llew. I wanted to play a couple of these in the deck just because I wanted some sort of attack extension. And also it's pretty good in line with the, well, actually both G units, with the Twin Sword and the Crystaluster, because Twin Sword, the unit that Llew calls in the deck is going to get a power increase from the Twin Sword skill. And then with Crystaluster, obviously more attack extensions means that they have more attacks to worry about, which means they have to guard with 3 or more with the Crystaluster, and Llew will help out with that with those attack extensions. So that's pretty cool. So I want to at least play 2 of those. And it's also sort of like a pseudo way of searching for Blaster Blade as well if you still need it, so that's also pretty cool. And it's also able to go get Larousse as well, so since this is a blaster, you can actually call it through Llew's skill, which is actually pretty cool. But those are the grade 2s that I decided to go with. So we'll go to the grade 1s. So first we have Paccgal, which I love this card. The card's pretty simple, but it's got so much flexibility within the premium format because with it being a 5k base, it essentially has the ability to like damage deny the opponent, or it can like potentially take away the opponent's drive checks if they don't want to give you damage. Because with it being 5k, they have almost no choice but to like damage you if they want to attack, unless they have like a 4k like Vanguard, which is very unlikely. But yeah, the low power actually helps you with gaining counterblast in the deck, so that you have the resources to spend and also to countercharge with Paccgal itself. But yeah, it's sort of the same sort of space as Larousse. I kind of want to play 4 of it just so I've got access to it. And like I said, it's actually somewhat of a viable ride target, kind of because of the 5k power. So yeah, I love playing 4 of this. It's really, really nice. So next, this is where the grade 1s get kind of interesting, because before we had to play like a lot of the stride fodder, but now we can actually replace those because of the new stride fodder crits, and we can actually play some different techie grade 1s. So the first grade 1 I'm playing is 3 copies of Lucius. So Lucius is actually the way that we can actually utilize Tarna. So of course Lucius triggers when you ride your Vanguard. You can put it into your soul, draw a card, and then call a card from your hand. So then you can use this to call Tarna from the hand, and then that will then trigger to then let you re-ride another Alfred from the deck. And this is all happening during the ride step, because obviously you ride the Vanguard, trigger Lucius, and then draw, call, and then trigger this, ride another Alfred. It's really, really cool. So I do like the utility that Lucius brings to the deck, in terms of being more flexible for our Tarnas, so they're not completely dead if we go second, or if we just, see them late game. We're still able to use them because of this, which is actually pretty nice. And, it does give you a soul as well, which, can come in handy for the Paccgal, but soul typically isn't much of a problem for the deck. You could also utilize that for the Monarch Soul Blast as well, I guess, since he does require a Soul Blast, which is a thing. So that is that. But yeah, I just decided to go over 3 of him. I don't think it's super important, but I do think he's got some nice usage in the deck for the Tarna. And the next we're playing 2 Gmoris. Gmoris I actually think is quite nice to have in here, just because I mainly wanted something to be able to recycle my Llews. Since these go into the soul for its skill after it's attacked, because you have the Paccgal in the deck, you can actually soul blast them out pretty easily, and then just having access to recycling them with the Gmoris is pretty cool when it comes to like calling them back out again with your Twin Sword. So I actually think that's quite nice. It gives you a way to like put the attack extender back into the deck just in case you do want that later on. So I do think that's kind of cool. I think one thing with Gmoris though that I kind of feel is that it's a little bit slow at times. I think. So one thing I've been thinking about was replacing these two for like maybe the two copies of the Grade One Stride Fodder, the normal Cecilius. But yeah, I don't know. But it's either this or that. I kind of want to go for the recyclability just because it feels a bit better. Gives you access to recycle Blaster Blade as well. So yeah, I feel more in favor of this. And also, this is a 10k shield as well, so it does give you a bit more defensive shield to work with, which is quite nice. So two copies of these. And then the last sort of techie grade one I'm playing is one copy of the Wingal. I still like playing this just because the extra 5k continuous on the Blaster Blade is just really, really nice. It's another magic number that the opponent has to work around when it comes to guarding, so I quite like it. It's a high beast as well, so your grade 2 can search it. I keep forgetting a name. Larousse, yeah, of course, Larousse. Larousse can search this since it's a high beast. So I think it's a nice, fun, techie one of, and it's the old school Wingal. It's the old Wingal, not the Wingal Brave that we got recently. So that's the thing. And again, another 10k shield to work with. And then the last grade one is going to be two copies of the Earina. This is the Vanguard skill PG, where when you ride it, you can draw a card and discard a card, which I think is good. If you do open up with a PG and you have no other choice but to ride it, usually I either keep these in the hand, but if I have no choice but to ride it, I'll ride it, but then I'll get a filter with it as well, which I think is pretty nice to help set up the future turns. So yeah, that's going to do it for the grade ones. Oh yeah, and one more thing is that the Earina has the added effect of being able to be called from the deck because of our Merrin, of course. So the cool thing is that this doesn't care where it's placed from, unlike some of the older PGs. I know that Lien is pretty good because it's a Soul Blast for a one-card PG, but I don't know, that's up to you. I kind of like running the two of these just because if I see one early, I want to have the other one spare just so I can have access to that deck PG, which I do think is one of the main strengths that that Royals have really in Premium, is to be able to PG from the deck. So I do want those. And there's also another reason as well, because of the triggers, which I'll get to in a second. So for the starter, of course, we're playing Elron, which of course, I mean, Elron's good. It's a counterblast, put it into Soul, as long as you've got an Alfred Vanguard. Call anything from the deck that isn't itself, basically, which is pretty good. A grade 2 or less card. So yeah, gets you any piece that you need. It is a counterblast, so it is, they can play around it. And the deck is already quite heavy CB, but you do have those Paccgals to countercharge you, and also just being able to use this and turn it into a Tarna for the extra re-ride, the extra gift marker on the grade 3 turn when you go first is pretty nice. So yeah, I don't know. You could play the V-Series starter if you wanted to. That is an option, just because you do get the extra soul's not important, but the extra draw could be nice for you to help see the Blaster Blade a bit earlier for the ride. I don't know. I still feel like this is just too good to pass up because you're literally searching anything that you need at that point, which is really, really nice. So one copy of him. And then for the triggers, we are going to be playing 4 copies of Flogal, of course. This is the win con of the deck with Blaster Blade. Yeah, restand it, get your extra attacks off, hopefully get some criticals on that Blaster Blade, and then swing for even more pressure. Really, really cool. Also works with your Llew, get the extra attacks off, and easily searchable through your Larousse. So it's yeah, it's perfect. I mean, don't really need to explain Flogal, but Flogal's Flogal. Then we have 4 copies of the new Stride Fodder Critical. These are actually really cool. So like I said before, we were playing the grade 1 Stride Fodder at more copies, just so that we could stride more consistently. But because of these essentially allow us to play a more varied grade 1 lineup, which I do think is nice. And like I said, I have been thinking about putting in 2 copies of the grade 1 Stride Fodder, just to have a bit more consistency there. You could replace the 2 Gmoris for that. But yeah, it's up to you with that. But I do like these. I do wonder what they're going to do next, though. Maybe like new heal triggers, maybe. That would be quite nice. Maybe make G-Guardians a bit stronger. Not too sure, but we'll see what happens. But we do also have 2 copies of the old Critical from 2019. Only playing 2 of it, though. I just think these are more important, basically. But you do get the cool addition of like being able to boost like your twin sword with this, and then doing the skills in order so that you can activate both of them. So that's pretty nice. So you do get the draw there and the power. But yeah, I do think only 2 of them is really worthwhile. It's also high beast, so you could call it with Larousse, but I wouldn't really recommend that because it's a crit and you want to keep them in your deck. So yeah, the only one we don't mind calling out, of course, is the Flogal, but you kind of want to keep your crits in the deck because you want that Blaster Bird to be beefy, right? So speaking of crits, I'm also playing 2 copies of the Sentinel crit. This I actually think is pretty good because the one thing I noticed with Alfred especially is that because we're going to be calling the Flogals from our deck for our combo, we're actually taking crits out of the deck technically. So to me, it makes more sense to play the extra crit lineup just so we have 12 crits in total, so we can increase those chances as much as possible for that Blaster Bird to get the crit stacks on him. So yeah, you could play the draw PGs over this because there are times where I do feel like having an extra Sentinel like that to actually nullify an attack does come in handy, since you can get some pretty powerful attacks coming at you at times. But like I said, that's one of the strengths about the deck is we do have Merrin to rely on with our heal triggers, so we can PG on demand if we so wish to. But yeah, I do feel like this has got some viability in the deck just because it gives us that extra chance to get the crits. But at the same time, we do have that 30k shield to work with as well, so we do get some defensive value out of it, but we're also getting the main value, which is the aggressive value, with the crit and just trying to kill the opponent, essentially. So I decided to go with this direction, but you could go with the draw PG if you want to, since, the actual draw could help, the nullify itself could help. So that's up to you, really. It's player preference, but I kind of like going with the Crit Sentinel. I do think it's got a good place in the Alfred deck overall, because we do have that deck PG that we can rely on. So, like I said, we have the heal triggers as well, of course, because we want a G-Guard, so don't really need to explain that. So that is going to be it for the main deck. So we'll quickly go through the G-Zone here, since there's not too much to go over. So first we have pretty much the best G-Unit, in my opinion, which is your Twin Sword. Playing 3 of these, honestly, you'd kind of wish that the opponent will die on the second one, since the games usually last for like a couple of strides anyway, like 2 or 3. I mean, you'd be really lucky to get the 3, but it's dependable. But usually 2 is like the soft spot to where the game is looking to end at that point. So I kind of have the third one in here as sort of like a last resort. Like if the game has ended up going for a little bit longer than expected, then at least the third one will be able to close the game out. But I do feel like 2 at minimum is good for the deck, at the very least. But yeah, he's just great being able to call out the grade 2s in the deck, giving power to anything that gets called from the deck as well. Synergize is very good with your Light and Dark Llew. Just a really good card. But obviously you do remember he needs to be boosted, and you do need a counterblast, so do remember that. So next we are going to be playing 2 copies of the new Crystaluster Dragon. I do feel like this card's got use in the deck. It's not as good as your Twin Sword. Like, Twin Sword is still the better option, but there are times where your opponent will play the Counterblast Deny game and you just don't have resources to play with. So having a decent skill where they have the Garden 3s for the GB3 effect is pretty good. Considering it requires no resource to activate as well, that's pretty handy to have. So I do feel like running 1 or 2 of him is at least viable, at least. So yeah, he's not too bad, but he's definitely got more usability in like an MLB deck, for example. So, but I think he's a nice, 1 or 2 of just for the Alfred deck. And then with him, we also have our 2 Gancelot. Of course, we're planning on flipping this up when we attack with our G unit, our Twin Sword, and then get the resist online for Blaster Blade, which is really nice. But then again, he also falls in the same category as your as your Crystaluster, just because, again, Gancelot is one of those cards where he's good and he requires no resource to activate. So yeah, you're getting your quad drive, your counter charge, an extra critical if you have something face up in the G zone. He's just a powerhouse, and it's just good if you've got nothing else to rely on, like if the opponent is damage denying you. So that is pretty solid. So just playing 2 of him there. And then the last the last sort of normal G unit I'm playing is the Alfred G unit. I thought it would be nice just to have this in the Alfred deck, kind of makes sense. But you could replace this for the Holy Squire Dragon, which is the unlock G unit for Alfred. And actually it might be more relevant just because I know that Chaos Breaker recently got announced for Standard, so Link Joker could see a resurgence, and depending on what they do with the lock mechanic, that could be something you want to look into there with the Holy Squire Dragon. But with Link Joker not really being much of a presence within my area, I don't really feel like there's a need to. So I kind of just went for like more of a generic G unit with the Alfred Holy Server. He does give you 5 drive checks, which is pretty good. But the usability of him outside of that is pretty niche. Usually I tend to use him for like flip fodder, more or less, if I don't think I need him really. Since we do have the Twin Sword, of course. Like I said, Twin Sword is just like your main go-to G unit more times than often. So it's very rare that we go into something else, but it really depends on the situation. And then the final like technical G unit is of course Ultima. I'm not playing Agnos. I did play Agnos for a good amount of time, but there was just really no occasions where I felt like it was necessary. I mean, you're basically ditching your hand to draw 3 random cards. I mean, it just doesn't sound good to me in this deck in particular, because you really want to keep the pieces for your combo in the hand, and then just drawing 3 random cards. Yeah, sure, you're technically gaining advantage, but I just don't think it's worth just for the risk factor that's involved there. So Ultima to me is just the only, dragon that you should run, to be honest, just for the win con of it. So yeah, I mean, Ultima is Ultima. If it goes off, then you're looking good. But it's not really like the main win con. It's just sort of like a side win con that you can rely on if needed. So yeah, we have the G units, the G Guardian, sorry. We have 1 Raktom, of course, for recycle ability to ditch and draw. We have the Dismal, of course, to protect our Blaster Blades, since those are going to be attacked more times than often. I also think there's usability with this. I think against Dark Irregular, I think. I can't remember exactly what the thing was, but there's extra usage for the Dismal outside of that. But I primarily just use it for the, protecting Blaster Blade, essentially, because I want to keep them on the field. Then we have Mat Skull. Really, really good with your Twin Sword, because it gets your extra cards face up, which means more power for the units called from the deck. The 1 Assault, sometimes you will have board presence, but I mean, it's debatable. It's a counterblast. It's situational at best, but I wouldn't blame you if you want to like replace this for like another Mat Skull, for example. So that's up to you. And then the final G unit, of course, is the 2 Meren G Guard, which is probably the best thing in the deck, honestly. It's one of the cool things about Royals and Premium is that we do have access to that deck PG when needed. So with that extra flexibility, it made me more confident to play the Crit Sentinel. So yeah, those are the G units. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And that's going to be it for the deck. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Kind of did a different approach with this deck in terms of presenting it. Kind of just wanted to, I don't know, have a bit more chill video and just go through the deck one by one. Since the deck hasn't changed completely since the last time I showed it, but it has had a few different tweaks here and there since the last deck, and it's pretty nice. I mean, Alfred's Alfred. It's not anything crazy. It's got some explosive plays that it can do. It's got a pretty nice, reliable combo that it can do. But is it like a top tier deck? I wouldn't say so. It's probably like maybe, I don't know, B tier at best, or maybe C. It's just not that explosive in terms of like what everything else can do in Premium. But it has got a reliable sort of engine to work with, and it's got some pretty good pieces to work with as well. So it's fun. It's a fun deck. I think next I'm going to be looking into a Premium Blaster deck. I'm still deciding how I want to go about that. I am looking more towards MLB, but it's kind of like, I don't know, the Premium MLB deck is basically like a standard deck with a few tweaks here and there, so I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this video regardless. I'm going to do another updated Premium deck later on. I'll probably do it in November, I think, since I want a bit of time to, put the Blaster deck together. But we'll see. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for me. And yeah, I knew it. It's a 20-minute video, of course, but oh well. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next video. So this is Guardian285, signing out. Take care, guys.